In this video, I'm going to be talking about landscaping. By landscaping, if you have a piece of property that you wanted to beautify and execute a blueprint on, you would need to actually do the work, right? The actual landscaping. In your mind, it's sort of the same way. You can have this vision, you can have this idea of the way that you want to interact or think or how you want your mind to be set up, but you have to actually take action to do that, right? To actually make some progress. So, stepping back a couple pieces to when we were talking about values, right? One of the ways that you can figure out how to actually do the landscaping, right? The actions you can actually take to influence your happiness, you have to go back through to your values and then figure out the actions that are most likely to produce the results you want. Now, there are also another bucket of things that fall into sort of the general health or optimization categories, but those things are sort of secondary to your values. So for example, improving your health overall, your physical health, doing things for your mind, those sorts of things. The reason that it's important to go back to your values first is because people value or weigh those things differently. So let's talk a little bit about how to sort of branch your values into actions. The way that I like to think of it is sort of like a tree, right? That splits down into these different branches. And if you start with something like a value of wanting to help people, right? If you start there, then from that value, you can create a goal. And then from that goal, you can figure out a specific action. So for example, you want to help people and then you have the goal of becoming a doctor. Well, becoming a doctor isn't necessarily an action in and of itself, right? So you need to get more granular and create another goal out of that goal. So if you have the goal to become a doctor, then you might have the sub goal of getting into med school. But that's still not an action in and of itself, right? You can't get up one day and take the action of get into med school. So then you need to further subdivide that goal into another goal or action, right? So if you look at, get into med school, one of the actions you might take is study 30 minutes a day. Well, that's actually something that you can do. So by creating these sorts of trees, this is the way that you can figure out what it is exactly that you need to do to sort of live out your values. And you may have to do a couple iterations of moving from value to goal, to goal, to goal, to action. Once you have those sorts of actions in mind, right? Once you know what it is that you need to actually do, that's when you can work on different pieces to help you execute either more often or more effectively. So when you get to that point, what comes into play is what I like to call action and system tools, right? These are two things that sort of help you get more things done. So we'll start with action tools, and action tools are basically the way that you are choosing to achieve a goal. So for example, if your goal was to get fit, right? Well, you need some sort of more specific goal. So maybe your next goal is to be able to run a 6-minute mile. From that goal, there are a number of different actions that you could potentially take to achieve that goal. So for example, you want to run your 6-minute mile. Maybe your action that you try, the action tool you use, is to run 1 mile a day and then once every 2 weeks try for, that faster mile. Now that may or may not work for you, right? As you figure out sort of the progress that you make, you can get an idea of whether or not that action tool is helping you reach your goal. Maybe after, 6 months of doing it, your record isn't improving and you're not getting any closer to that 6-minute mark. Well, in that case, you might want to look at some different action tools. So for example, you could maybe do a long distance run twice a week and sprints 3 times a week. And that might be another action tool. Now, for this specific example, I'm not saying, one is better than the other. I'm just saying for any specific goal, there are often multiple ways that you can try to take action to achieve that thing. And you need to pay attention to sort of the results that you get, right, as you're executing to figure out what kind of progress you're making and how effective those things are. So this is where system tools come into play. And system tools are basically anything that helps you use action tools more effectively. So one idea is maybe a tracker, right? Something like a spreadsheet or something else that you track all your runs, you track how well you're progressing towards that overall goal, and then seeing if the action tool you're using is actually effective. Other system tools sort of fit in this bucket of things like having a calendar that's filled out, right? A calendar is a system tool because it helps you slot all the different actions that you need to take in the day and time bound them so that you know when to do them. So by using a combination of these system tools, right, different ones tend to work for different people, and experimenting and tracking with action tools, you can make progress towards your goals, which should feed up into your values, which should help you feel better and happier overall. And now sometimes it's a little bit more straightforward than other times, but since purpose is one of the things that we're trying to drive towards, this is going to be one of the ways that you can sort of link all these things together and figure out what's going on. Now, one of the nice things that you can do is work backwards as well, because a lot of times what happens is people get stuck in sort of these positions where they're sort of they've fallen into some sort of set of patterns or habits or life situation, and you can work backwards to see if the things that you're doing are actually fitting into your values. So let's say you have some particular type of job. Well, if you can work backwards to figure out what value that fulfills, or if it doesn't fulfill a value, then that can help you make decisions and change things moving forward. So again, going back to our metaphor of landscaping, right? Once you have the plan and you have a place to sort of rest and recover, you need to actually do the work. And in a similar way as what I've talked about with these mind tools, right? There's different tools that you can use to sort of execute the landscaping, and different tools are going to work in different ways. So you need to be open to experimenting on different things, right? Certain tools may work in one landscape and not another. In the same way, in your mind, certain system tools may work really well for you, but they may not work for other people you know. And again, same thing with sort of the action tools, right? You may be able to use a particular type of shovel or some other thing in a particular landscape, but it may not work other places. In the same way, sort of this idea of, you run a certain amount a day, work for somebody to reach their goals. It may not work for you. You may need to use some different set of action tools. So tracking your progress and having the system tools that allow you to understand your progress is really important. So hopefully that helps you understand what you can do once you have sort of this plan in place to start making progress. That's all I've got for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.